Alright everyone, Shifty EBIKE here. Today we've got a brand new video, and today is my first actual YouTube video where I'm going to be doing some commentary, we're going to be doing an actual topic, talking through a few things, and let's get on with it. So today we're going to be reviewing the mainly stock Talaria Xxx after 1,300 miles. I say mainly stock because I have upgraded my wheels, I've got riser bars, direct stem mount, all that sort of stuff, 1916 wheels, but it's before you move to the actual power upgrades, like your 72 volt batteries, your new controllers and new motors, stuff like that. I have got a nuclear P24F controller on at the minute, however I've only actually put this on about 75 miles ago. So I'm going to be doing the review from stock, and then I'll do a separate review on the nuclear P24F and how the controller's been performing for me. So I've got a few clips showing in here, showing some different terrain, different environments, all sorts of different situations that you're going to be throwing the bike at. I'm going to be leaving some little gaps in between me talking, just so you can get a feel for the ride. And first thing I'm going to say about the Talaria Xxx is it is louder than a Surron, lightly anyway, and it's louder than a Talaria Xxx. That's not always a deal breaker for some people. Some people don't mind a little bit more noise because it is marginal. It's not like it's as loud as the Ultra B or anything like that, but it's between Ultra B and Light B. So for every negative, there's most likely a positive. Main positive for a Talaria Xxx, I'm going to give 3 positives. So first one being the price point. These bikes are around £1,000 less than any other of these e-bikes that you can get. So that's a Surron, which should come in at about 4,250 depending on where you're getting them, and this is road legal versions because I've got a road legal version myself, so I'm only going to be doing these references to how the road legal versions link up together. So Talaria Xxx road legal comes in at £3,250 depending on where you get them from. So that's obviously a £1,000 saving straight off from just getting the bike. One positive. Second positive being the power over a Surron. So a Surron comes in at around 4,000 to 4,500 watts, depending on which version you get, and depending on what year model you've got. The Talaria Xxx comes stock with 5,000 watts, and this is very noticeable when you step on both of these bikes. The snappiness of the Talaria throttle is so much better compared to the stock Surron throttle, which isn't anywhere near as snappy and is not as responsive as the Talaria. So that's the second positive, and the third big positive is its size and the appearance, because as most of you probably know if you come from the UK and you're watching these videos, these bikes are quite frowned upon by a lot of people and are definitely classed as illegal if you're riding them where you shouldn't be without tax, insurance, road legal number plate, all that sort of stuff, but I think could be beneficial depending on where you are. Also, with how thin the bike is, it's actually quite a lot thinner than a Surron. When you sit on a Surron, your legs can sort of wrap round, and it does feel like a bit of a... It's not as substantial as a Talaria Xxx, where it does feel like you're on a substantial, small, lightweight motorbike. The Surron is slightly thinner than that, but the XXX is even thinner than that. So if you can get a really good grip with your legs on the side of the frame. But so there's 3 positives for the Talaria XXX straight off the bat, which I think are major selling points for this bike. Going on to some of the negatives, I'm going to say obviously the suspension is what most people would worry about, because no rear linkage and no real upgrades for rear suspension in reference to the shock, the spring. You can't really do that much with the stock suspension at the back because the actual battery compartment is really close to where your rear shock absorber is, and if you get a £550 spring or a £650 spring, because them springs are wider, it will not actually fit with that battery compartment as it is, and it will actually rub on the outside of your battery compartment. So yeah, second, I'm actually going to say the front forks. I'm going to say it as another negative because obviously these come with D&M forks as standard, which if you've been in the Surron community for a little bit, these D&M forks are more or less the worst forks you can get. Don't get me wrong, it's obviously on a stock bike, and I don't think any of these forks that come stock properly handle the weight of a Surron with a rider on it. I feel like a lot of them are quite weak and quite plush, but I feel like a lot of sag is taken up by just the rider weight, especially in my case. So I'm coming from saying the suspension on the Talaria Xxx isn't great, and this is mainly because I am a 6'2", 100 kilo, which is about 15.5 stone rider. These bikes are not made for somebody of my size typically, and typically people would go for a Stinger or would go for an Ultra B, but that wasn't the case for me. I liked the small form factor, the price point was brilliant, and obviously the price over at Surron, I didn't want to pay all that money for a nice new bike. It was a Surron Light B or Ultra B, and for me to not use it, because these bikes are very subjective whether you should buy one or not. If you're going to be buying one of these bikes and thinking you're just going to rip around the street, you're going to go to work, you're going to go to your mates' houses and that, don't get me wrong, that's fine, but you are definitely going to have some sort of bother from police. People are going to complain about it, all sorts of stuff like that. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you're going to be getting one of these bikes, countryside, you've got to have something around you that you're going to be able to actually use these bikes on and not get too bothered, because this isn't a long-term solution. It's not really a long-term thing that you're going to want to be doing, because you're going to attract a lot of attention, and one day something bad's going to happen and you're going to end up getting your bike took off you. But if you was in the countryside, or if you know of country or parks, alleyways, stuff like that nearby, yeah, 100% these bikes are something that you could definitely be getting. But I would not get one of these if you are in a super busy city, if you was in London, something like that, in the town centre, because you're going to get a lot of bother and people are really after these bikes. So you can't just cruise around not thinking, oh, someone's going to want to get this bike off me, because people are going to want these bikes, and people are definitely going to make effort to get you off your bike and get this bike if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the countryside with the boys, brilliant, you got no worries at all really. You got worries from the police or whatever, but police, what are they going to really do? Personally, I think if you're being respectful, if you're taking it steady, if you're not tearing everything up, if you're not being obnoxious towards dog walkers and people walking, whatever, I think you're going to be completely fine. But it is worth a disclaimer, because some people see these videos on YouTube of people in America where they're just cruising about, wheeling, bareface, and it's all happy clappy, but that's not the case in the UK, to be honest. It's a little bit sketch, you've sort of got to cover your face, you end up looking like a bit of a thug, you end up looking quite intimidating and that. It's just quite bait, to be honest. So I sort of realised I'd done a bit of a beeline there, and I was saying about the negatives of the bike, and then I've gone into the legality, so I'm going to try and bring it back. So the first negative was the rear shock, the second negative was going to be the front forks, the third negative, I'm going to say, is the wheels that it comes with. And I know some people might say, oh, but it comes with 1917 off-road style tyres, but because I got the road legal, it came with two 17-inch Supermoto wheels and tyres, which are obviously built for the road. And yeah, I do use this bike on the road a bit, and I do use these wheels a bit, but if you was going to get one of these bikes, I think even for the geometry and for traction, because the weather in the UK is not brilliant, you're going to have to go for a 1916 wheel set for that wide 16-inch fat tyre on the back. And when I went for my wheels, there's only one place I debated, only one place I'd ever go to for my wheels, and that's WGT Racing. I'm not sponsored in any way, I'm not affiliated with him, I bought his product and I've absolutely loved him, because it's completely changed the feel of the bike. It's actually made up for a lot of the suspension issues because of the amount of meat you can get on the tyre. It does make it feel a lot softer. Also, traction is not an issue at all anymore. it could rain for 3 days in the UK, and we all know how soppy it can get, and I'm still getting traction on my 16-inch tyre. Whereas when I had the 17-inch, I changed the Supermoto tyres for some Shinko 241s, and yeah, they was good, and they did have a lot less rolling resistance than my current tyres, but they had no real traction. And I know you could get like motocross tyres, but I felt like that 19 at the front is essential for the whole geometry of the bike. The 17-inch at the front just makes you go over the front of your handlebars a little bit, and it doesn't feel very comfortable. Whereas as soon as I put the 19 on, even if I was running the 1917, I'd still say that was going to be a lot better. But the 1916 is absolutely perfect for these bikes, and I can't thank WGT Racing enough, because this wheel set has totally transformed the bike and made it so much better to ride. So much more comfort, so much more traction, I've got so much more confidence in it. Literally couldn't say any more good things about it, and like I say, I'm not affiliated, I'm not being paid to say this. It's just a great product, great service, and a great lad. So there's the negatives, and obviously from the negatives I've said, some people would say that these are not built for off-road, and if I'm honest, I do agree with that, because with the way this bike comes, it's definitely not set up for off-road riding as such. It's made for sort of dual sport, but probably mainly road and pavement use, to be honest. But I think with the 1916 wheel set, and with a little bit of putting up with stiff rear shock, I think this is a great fun off-road style BMX type thing. If you've come from hardtail mountain bikes, I don't think you're going to have much of an issue with the rear shock on this bike. And I think if you come from that sort of background, you're going to be throwing this about anyway, and I think all these bikes are going to feel quite lacking in suspension. And when I'm riding like this, if I'm going downhill or uphill over tree roots and stuff like that, yes, the suspension at the front is not fantastic by any means, and you do feel some slight flex in your stanchions. So as you can see by the things I've been saying and the negatives, if I was going to buy this bike again, my first upgrade would probably be a set of forks. And I understand it's a bit of a contradiction because I've had the bike for 1,300 miles and I've not upgraded the forks. They are quite an expensive upgrade. Don't get me wrong, I know you're saving £1,000 off buying a Surron, so if you was to buy something like the Fastest 2.0 forks, which I would definitely like to be sent a pair of, if it came with these forks, I don't think you'd have any issue whatsoever. And obviously these forks are a lot cheaper than something like the EXT Ferro forks, which are well over £1,000, the Fox 40 is well over £1,000. Whereas these Fastest 2.0 forks, which again, not sponsored, but would really like sponsorship from, these are around £600, which is amazing in my opinion for a £60 spring, and it feels a lot more like it's built for these bikes rather than built for downhill mountain bikes like the Fox 40s. So obviously I've mentioned my 1916 wheel set, I've mentioned the wheel sizes. Another thing I've got to mention, which some people would say is a negative, but I don't really experience much of a negative in it, is how comfy the seat is. XXX is not a very comfortable seat if you're going to be out for over 2.5 hours. Over 2.5 hours, you're going to start hurting. And I know, in theory, you're not supposed to be sat on your seat all the time. If you're doing off-road, you're supposed to be standing up, getting out of that seat, getting in that attack position. But obviously, it is all about comfort as well, because you want to be comfortable on what you're riding. You want to be able to feel like you're on a nice, comfortable ride out with the boys, enjoying yourself. Another thing I'm going to mention is obviously top speed, because I know people go crazy for the top speed on these bikes. These bikes are advertised as hitting around the same, around the 50-mile mark. It's a very similar sort of thing where from stock they'll probably only hit 47 sort of thing. Obviously with me going 17-inch rear wheel and going up to a 54.2 sprocket, I've probably only hit about 44, 45 miles an hour now because of this. So that's obviously just something to bear in mind. So one of the last points I'm going to talk about is the upgrades you can buy for this bike. So it's been a little over a year since release, and companies have definitely started bringing out 72 volt batteries, controllers that will fit the XXX, and motors that will fit the XXX. So 72 volt batteries, at the minute you're probably only looking at EBIKE if you're in the UK, which is a 74 volt 44 amp hour. You can't really get any other battery in the UK at the minute unless you wanted to pay quite high import fees from something like Chai Battery Systems, which I've seen a lot of positive reviews on. I've seen a lot of confidence in their work, and obviously other companies have had some fire issues which have definitely started alarming people and putting people off buying controllers. I've obviously fitted the Nuclear P24F controller to my bike, but I know EBMX X9000 will work. Torp have said that they're in production to make a TC500 that will fit the XXX as well. So it's definitely on companies' radars, and it's definitely something that companies are thinking about, and I think over time more and more companies are just going to do the same sort of thing. As far as motors go, I think I've only really seen one motor used, and it's the Surron motor that's built for the Surron. I think it's the FW02 motor. So that motor unlock obviously as much power as you want if you've already done the battery and the controller upgrade. Because people, at the minute, I'm going to go into more of a detail when I do my nuclear review of the P24F, but what I'm going to say is, from stock, obviously in the UK, they come with 5 kilowatts, and if you was with a nuclear controller, the only drawback at that point is your battery. So your battery will limit you to around 6.8 kilowatts from the stock 5 if you're in the UK. Last thing I'm going to talk about is if you should buy this bike. Basically, if this is sort of relevant to you, whether it's if you're a big rider. If you're a big lad like me, I still wouldn't shy away from getting a bike like this, to be honest. I think it completely does the job. I've had such a good time on it. Like I said, I've got 1,300 miles. I've had no real issues with it. This is obviously a miles better price point for one of these bikes as well. So if you're looking to get into this sort of e-bike, e-moto type of community, if you wanted to start riding these bikes, this is definitely a good starter bike. Don't get me wrong, if you've already been into sort of motocross in your life, if you're used to motocross bikes, yeah, you're probably going to not want this one. You're going to want either the Ultra V, or if you was going to spend a lot of money, you'd be getting the Start Varg Alpha. But if you're looking for these small e-moto style bikes, just to rag about as a bit of a toy, for fun, I don't think you can have any issues at all with the Talaria Xxx, and with it being at the price point it is, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. Start a build on something like this, because you're only going to buy a Surron anyway, and still want to upgrade the power with its controller, battery, motor. You'd be able to get similar results with a Talaria Xxx, but obviously you're £1,000 cheaper straight off the bat. So bear that in mind. Obviously, I think this is a really good bike, and I have obviously kept this bike for over a year. I do ride this a lot, and I think for the price point, for the size, everything about it is absolutely perfect for me. I definitely recommend buying this bike, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video today. As always, and what I'm going to be doing frequently, is asking if you can drop a like on this video, because it's completely free. It really helps out the channel. It gets it out to more people, gets people seeing these videos. I would really appreciate it if you could drop a like and drop a subscription. Thanks so much. Shifty E-Bikes signing out.